Hi, I'm Jerry Costin, author of BentonPride.com. We're starting a new segment today. We're going to call it Benton Business Talk. And what we plan to do is pick a topic of interest to people. Either it's been in the news or it's been on the tongues of people around town. We're going to gather in a couple of principals that are involved closely with the topic, and we're going to ask them some serious questions. Our first topic is the recent lawsuit that was filed against the city. My guest today will be Mayor David Mattingly and City Attorney Brent Houston. Please enjoy. First, I'd like to thank you both for coming. And to start things off with, I want to ask Mr. Houston a question. First question is in simple terms. Could you please let us know the premise of the lawsuit? In other words, what did the plaintiffs claim that the city did wrong?
Well, basically, Jerry, the plaintiffs were claiming that the city had spent money illegally, that their belief was that we were using public money for private purposes, and that we could not do that as an incentive to attract a business to our city. Okay,
so I understand that somewhere in the complaint, the term illegal exaction?
An illegal exaction is an accusation where a city or county or state government is using money illegally. For instance, if we have a tax that's dedicated solely for park-related purposes, we can't take that money and then go spend it to build a street on the other side of town where there is no city park. That would be an illegal exaction because we've taxed for one purpose but using it for another.
Mr. Mayor, you got anything to contribute on this point? Do you spend a lot of time on how money is, where the sources are and where that money has to go?
I'm very, very cautious, always have been. It's a responsibility of the office to be sure that the money is being used in line with the way the tax or the ballot initiatives were passed. And I concur with him that the way we did this was done right and by law.
Okay. So, Mr. Houston, what were the primary points of the lawsuit that you had to refute?
Well, the primary things were what were we using the money for, and what were the sources of those funds, where did they come from. And we addressed those with the court, and we explained exactly what this project was. And we were showing that there was a public purpose, that this entire area over there would benefit by the sewer line.
Yeah, the area we're talking about roughly, tell me if I'm wrong here, but it's Highway 5 from the Military Road crossover down to Alcoa Road.
Yes,
roughly?
That's right. That's approximately, I believe that's correct, from 5 down to around the Long Hills area in that neighborhood.
Okay. And the shops at Benton, that new shopping center is going in down there, and they're the ones that it was kind of named in the lawsuit, right? That they were.
Well, that was really one of their bones of contention, that we shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars as an incentive for the shopping center to come to Benton. And we established one under law that we can try to attract people here to do business. That's one thing. The second thing is that there was a need for this line, the sewer line in particular, outside of this shop. And if that area is ever going to develop, sewer services is going to be an essential component to any development.
Several times during the proceedings, the opposing attorney suggested that the city was giving money to the shops of Benton. Did anything like that actually occur?
No, nothing like that is going to occur at all. What the city is doing is spending money to build infrastructure in this particular area of town.
All right. What was the final result of the lawsuit?
Well, the judge ruled in our favor, found that we had not done anything wrong, and denied their petition. That was the result a few weeks ago.
Okay. Moving on to Mr. Mayor. How long has the project, the running of infrastructure down Highway 5, been in the works?
Since 2009, a year before, or almost 2 years before I came to office. I was involved in some other things, trying to help the city with some other issues, public safety and so on, and I was aware, which also surfaced, as I recall, at the trial or at the hearing, that through our witness, I believe it was Mr. McKinney, that this has all been, or Byron Hicks, I believe it was, it clearly showed the documents were being produced in 2009, and this was all a part of water and utility services that had to get there sooner or later, so it was already a part of the plan. The utilities and plans were all in place. I knew nothing about GBT until April of last year, nor did anyone else. So I don't think there was any predisposed to try to figure out in 2015 what we were going to do or not do for one particular developer.
Right. Well, that leads to the next question. It's a question on economic development. I think we'll all agree that providing the infrastructure down the Highway 5 was an incentive for GBT to build the shops at Benton. There's been a lot of discussion in state newspapers and other publications about the effectiveness of economic development programs. Can you compare Benton's economic development strategy versus, say, the state's, and why do you think yours is working and theirs may or may not be?
Well, that's a great question. Well, let me just say, if we had the kind of funds that the state, from what I read a couple of weeks ago, is putting into their economic development incentives, 25 companies getting millions of dollars a year, etc., I just feel real confident we could probably even be more successful than we have been. I think there's a very significant thing which we are doing, approved by the attorney and counsel and all, but maybe they're not. I don't know. I shared with you and others when the state newspaper asked questions of these agencies. They did not know how many jobs had been created. They did not know what was the real return for giving X company $3 million. And I can tell you is that everything we've done, that I think ended up being $800,000 of general fund money and $600,000 of utilities for 1.4 for the utility infrastructure, had a purpose. The purpose, first of all, was to get the utilities to properties that ultimately would be usable for shops, which create sales revenue, and that's what ultimately happened. The plans in 2009, nobody knew. All we did was have somebody come to us that wanted to go there and said, well, but the utilities aren't there, and how can you do something that would assist us in respect of the whole cost of the project? So we assisted those with what people think, while all the other pieces of property that you've already described, from the service road all the way to are also going to benefit from the same thing. Every person who owns property on the north side or the south side, all the way from their back. Our own fire department is being built less than a 16th of a mile from the entrance to the shopping center. When we started designing it, I had no idea we needed water. Sewer wasn't the chief needed water pressure. We got ISO 2 and a new fire station because we were going to do water. All those things were a part of the thinking of this, not about how to make it more nicer for GB. So it just happened to work out that way, but there's a return. $1.3 million worth of sales tax, $1.4 million worth of cost. 15 months after this thing opens, we will be receiving sales and tax revenues. It'll be helping us do other infrastructure projects. I believe that's a direct return. I don't see, when I read about all the stuff the state does, that they're really linking or concerned about what is the return.
Getting back to the lawsuit, do either one of you believe that the lawsuit will in any way impact future economic development incentive programs by the city?
Well, I think the decision in this case was consistent with a similar lawsuit that was brought a few years ago concerning our participation in Harvest when it came to town. Basically, what the city is doing is within our own right-of-ways, on our own property, installing utility lines and utility services. There's only certain things that the city can do to help make an incentive to anybody to come to town. And generally those are along the lines of public facilities, such as streets, drainage networks, running utility lines, sewer lines, electric lines, whatever it may be. And so I think that it shows a willingness on Benton's part to participate and try to encourage people to come to this area to develop.
Well, I respect the law that allows people to file a lawsuit. I can't say that in 70-some years and being through 40-some years of business, I haven't been on both sides of where I thought I was right and found out I wasn't, and vice versa. But when you get down to where we're going, I think the majority of the community agrees that if we don't do things to grow our schools like Long Hills is going to do with 200 and some new students multiplied by some factor of $80, and you do all these other things, my biggest fear, and what I struggled with the most when I came here, was here you got a city that's growing. It was 40% over a 10-year period of time. The tax revenue was bouncing along, not growing. That is, in my opinion, a recipe for disaster. Because no matter how you want to feel about it, and maybe when I got in this office it became a little clearer, all those folks who moved here are customers. In one way or another, they want things that they know they're going to have police, fire. And that was the easier part, because that was like a half cent for public safety. We don't have enough police officers. What was really the struggle was quality of life. Quality of life, when you compare us to Rogers, Cabot, all the other communities where I want to talk business, where we all want business to come and help be a part of that tax growth without being taxed. We didn't have the amenities to compete. I told the story once, I told it 1,000 times, sitting in a room talking to somebody on a Saturday, you need to bring a business there. And he said, where's your pool? I'm sorry, we don't have one. I mean, you could tell in the room, the entire demeanor of that discussion changed because of, well, you're going to go and talk about soccer, you're going to go and talk about all these other things. So I knew we had a problem. So I think we're on the right path, and I'm comfortable with the way this lawsuit played out. They certainly had the right to do it. I think we did the right thing, and as the attorney said, I think already been tested once, been tested twice, and I think we'll continue down the road with his guidance that we're doing these things right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Houston.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Thanks.